the entire week that it's going to be, because the UFC is doing the Fan Expo. You know, you've got 3 or 4 what could be main event and headline fights, you know, including the Bisping-Henderson clash. And I just think overall the experience of this being a very special UFC is what's going to make it for me. And we did that best of 2008 where we had, you know, 3 great matchups. But I just think with all the fans wanting to go, the tickets being gone so quickly, the numerous great fights that are on the card, I really believe that the entire experience will be unlike any UFC we've seen before.
OK, Mike, thank you very much. We're out of time in terms of speaking to you this evening. Is there anything you'd like to say in closing?
Well, I think that I should say, you know, thank you, first of all, for having me on. I can't wait to be overseas again and be in Germany. And for our interview, it is all over.
That will be my ringtone before the end of the night. Guys, just pick up on what Mike was saying there in terms of who might challenge Machida. Rampage Jackson?
I don't think it will be. I think we're going to see Mauricio Shogun Rua come forward here. But again, you know, obviously he's got the Muay Thai and, you know, he's got great kind of skills on the ground. But I see it as, again, you've got to back Lyoto Machida again in that one. It's, and as Mike said, it's the same with Rampage. Although I think Rampage does bring a different... something different. He's got different skills. He didn't look great in the last outing against Jardine, I have to add.
I've taken a look forward to some of the fighters that Machida could face. I don't see him being stopped by Rampage. I see that being over pretty quickly. Yeah, Rampage is an excellent fighter, no disrespect to him.
Yeah.
Shogun, again, you know, he's got the flash jiu-jitsu and stuff, but again, Machida, I think, will stop him.
Yeah, I agree.
I wrote on the website, I don't see Machida losing the belt until at least 2011, and I think you're looking at an up-and-comer. Like
some predictions.
That's a big call, Ben. At the bottom of the predictions chart.
I think we're looking at an up-and-comer like a John Jones. I think we've got to see what he's an innovator in the octagon. Yeah. You know, he's got the takedowns, the throws, all that kind of stuff.
I think there's an issue here, and it's a great pity that and it may happen. I mean, it does sometimes happen time to time. The 2 guys, Lyoto Machida and Anderson Silva, share the same manager and the same training camp with Ed Suarez, and they've said they won't fight each other. But I think that would be a super fight.
That would be the ultimate.
But whether we get that fight, I don't know. But it's one of those things that fighters, in a way, it's like Rashad Evans said he could never fight Keith Jardine. Forget that, guys. You know, you're in a sport where you know you've got to be better than the guy next to you. I'd love to see Anderson Silva and Lyoto Machida.
It would be great, but there's a nobility in this sport, and I just do not see that those 2 would ever step inside the
nobility. What are you talking about? Get him in there. Let's get it on. Right, thanks, guys. We're going to take a very short break there, but still plenty more to come on Ultimate Talk this evening, including what's coming up in the next few months. Next up, Wanderlei headlines at 99 in Germany. But who else can we look forward to? We'll go through it next. Hello, welcome back to Ultimate Talk here on Setanta Sports. Now, remember, as always, we want to get your emails and texts. Contact us at views@setanta.com or on 6300. And remember, you can, as always, see the show on the UFC website, UFC.com, or you can download it as a podcast. Just go to iTunes and follow the links for Ultimate Talk. Or, of course, you can go to setanta.com. That's the housekeeping done. Let's crash on. Now, the other fight which got everyone buzzing at the weekend, of course, was the battle of the mats. That's Hughes versus Serra. Nothing to do with me, obviously. Just have a look. Hughes won a unanimous decision despite being in real trouble early on. Ben, did we see vintage Hughes, or is it just another classic fighter winding down his career?
Definitely not vintage Hughes, but definitely trademark Hughes. You see he got knocked down early with what turned out to be a headbutt. But was vintage Hughes in the respect that he clung on for the leg. He's a brilliant scrambler, as Hughes. And then from rounds 2 and 3 onwards, the same old takedowns we've always seen from Hughes. Controls his man on top. For me, it wasn't the most exciting fight I've ever seen. For 2 guys who are talking massive grudge match here, how they want to punch each other in the face, I didn't see much of that going on. There was a lot of skill, though. It
was nobler sport 5 minutes ago, Ben. Now you want to see him punch each other in the face.
There was a lot of skill there, you know, particularly from Serra, jiu-jitsu-wise. He stopped Hughes doing damage from on top. But, you know, if you're talking grudge matches in the ilk of Tito Ortiz, Ken Shamrock or Melvin Guyard, Rich Clemente, not for me.
Well, I think what the fight actually showed was deep down these 2 guys have a great respect for each other as fighters.
Yeah.
They might not like each other as people. you know, they didn't touch gloves at the beginning, but you could see Serra say to Hughes at the end, right, that's the smack talk over now, no more. I really enjoyed the fight. I was desperate for Hughes to get knocked out in the first round because I predicted it. But I thought Serra was tremendous, but I was just disappointed in the fact that he stayed. I mean, there wasn't a lot he could do. He was pinned by Hughes, and Hughes got his rhythm in the second round once he kind of realised where he was, because I think he said after the first round to his corner, you know, what happened to me there was I knocked out, and he was clearly out on his feet. But Hughes really showed why he's such a great legend in the sport and such a champion. He didn't know where he was. He's out on his feet, and he clung in there for 3 minutes. It was an accidental headbutt, but I thought Serra was tremendous in the first round. But if Serra only used knees more or kicks more, he could have had much more adaptability to put Hughes away in that first round. You know? It was disappointing in that sense.
I think it's worth saying that if those two had fought 5 years ago, Hughes would have obliterated him.
I agree.
We would not have predicted Serra 5 years ago.
Yeah, but I also think that if they'd fought 5 rounds on Saturday night, it could have been different.
Well, it was just heating up towards the final bell, really, wasn't it? Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I know what you mean in the sense that you feel a bit of disappointment, in the sense that it was just warming up. We could have done with 5 rounds. And there is that element sometimes when, you know, it is the kind of supporting act that I know only the title fights are 5 rounds, but sometimes I'd like to see some of those big fights go 5 rounds, because the fighters start with a different game plan, don't they? They're fighting for 25, not 15 minutes.
OK, well, let's get some more reaction. Joining us on the line is Steve Cofield from Yahoo Sports. Steve, first, if we can, we're hearing that Rashad Evans and Rampage will be the next coaches of TUF 10, that will be. What do you make of that breaking news?
Yeah, they just announced it a little while ago. You know, it doesn't shock me from the standpoint that I think Machida was going to be a tough sell to the English-speaking audiences out there. His English is getting better, but I think he was going to need subtitles or a translator on the show. It's shocking from the standpoint that Rampage doesn't get his shot at Machida anytime soon. But I'll tell you, Rampage is he's an interesting guy. We were just listening to the conference call a little while ago. He was saying that, you know, Rashad called him out a while back. That's who he wants. He can wait. He said it many times. He doesn't fight for title belts, and he'll wait to fight Machida. I think the interesting thing now is, who does Machida fight next? Because there's candidates out there, but there's no, you know, overwhelming, obvious choice.
Well, just because you brought up the subject of Machida, what did you make of his performance? Are you as stoked about it, as we say over here, as we are, as Gareth and Ben are in the studio?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you couldn't be wowed by the whole thing. I mean, I would like to see him go out and put together another win or two against, you know, high-level major 205ers before I start talking about him in the top 4 pound for pound. But, I mean, he's right on the edge, and his potential is gigantic. I mean, the guy has always been a dangerous, elusive fighter, but, I mean, now when you add in killer instinct and he's going to go in and fire on guys like that, someone's got to solve him from the defensive standpoint. But while you're doing that, you also have to watch out for the kicks and the punches, and he looks like he has potential to be right up there with the pound-for-pound best.
So who do you put him in next with, then?
You know, it's a tough one. I was trying to make a list last night. I wrote a story this morning on Yahoo Sports, on CageWriter.com, and I don't think whoever they match him up against is, you know, it's going to be a little bit of a question mark, because there is no one obvious out there. I throw out Chuck Liddell as, you know, one final super fight if you want to put him in there, and it's a way to build Machida if he beats him against a major opponent. The other choice, which I think would be kind of a strange choice, but Shogun Rua would be a guy who's in line. I don't, you know how those guys get along, or if they'd object to that. That would be the highest level fighter, but I think they're going to have to pull a unique opponent out against Machida, and it'll probably be in an effort to kind of build his name, because I think outside of Rua, there really isn't anyone obvious. You know, with Anderson Silva and Forrest Griffin already booked, there isn't anyone obvious out there who's going to be, you know, a huge name opponent who, will go into the fight with very good odds and a very good chance of beating him.
OK, Steve, thank you very much for your time this evening, as ever. Thanks for being with us. Guys, just a reaction to what Steve was saying there. Firstly, about Rampage and Rashad in terms of being coaches of TUF 10. Does that float your boat? Absolutely.
And you can see the building blocks here that Rashad and Rampage, you know, and they both laugh about the fact they've said this, a bit of black-on-black crime it was going to be before Rampage had to have his jaw sorted out, the ligaments in his jaw. Great match-up for a series. 2 guys who I think are a great match in the octagon. It's a great, you know, it's a fans fight. And also, of course, Evans has got the possibility that if he beats Rampage, he can get back in there and avenge his defeat. to Lyoto Machida, which I'm sure he's still very sore from at the moment. If you saw the pictures of him knocked out, it looked like his eyes had disappeared to the other side of his head.
Yeah.
But also from what Steve was saying and from what you were saying, Gareth, Shogun probably is who he maybe ought to fight
Shogun
next.
who or Shogun who?
Either, both of them.
Yeah.
It might say both of them.
I think
Can he win?
You know, I mean, yeah, of course he can win. You know, this is a sport where different styles marry. There's a way of unlocking Machida, but people haven't found it yet. Rashad didn't, you know, it's very easy to say from this distance, but in those 7 minutes, did Rashad not realise, or did his corner not realise, did his team not realise that he needed to go to plan B in his game plan? It wasn't working. Why didn't he shoot for the takedown, you know? He's got great takedown, he's a great wrestler. We haven't seen much wrestling from Rashad. And, you know, we haven't seen Machida on his back yet in the UFC, I don't think.
What I would say to that is there were a couple of brief